when you have control over, for example, the seeds that produce a large fraction of the food that is consumed by people, you have a tremendous amount of power over them. Whether, as long as the seeds are planted, that power is not evident. But those who control those seeds have a lever that is well beyond what the demons of the 20th century had dreamed of, really.
Absolutely, which is precisely why I started the movement of Dania, about which I've talked in my book on the biodiversity of movements in Terra, Viva. That beginning with one seed, you can reclaim this, reclaim your freedom and the commons. And I mentioned the 150 community seed banks. Those community seed banks have helped farmers jump back after a cyclone. In the drought years, the drought-resistant crops have allowed farmers to have food. So, from my own life, saving a seed is saving the freedom, saving the potential of creating abundance, and saving the power to share. That, to me, is thinking of the left, the ability to share rather than the ability to monopolize, because there's an extractive economy that takes and takes and takes. And there's a solidarity economy, an economy of care that I call, an economy that takes everyone into account, every species into account. And at least from my work, I have seen everyone does better. Yeah, we grow more food. Farmers' incomes come up. The ecosystems thrive. On our farm, we have 6 times more butterflies than in the forest. Our water levels have come up 70 feet by not exploiting the water, but giving water back to the soil. So saving a seed, a little seed, I think that is very, very powerful. And no matter what the laws in which country, I think everyone should do 2 things. Save a seed, grow it in your windowsill, even if you don't have a garden. Just take 1 pot and 1 plant, because it reestablishes your relationship. And through that reestablished relationship, you have a different sense of who you are and what the world is. And the second, if you can, grow a garden.
I quite like this for multiple reasons. I mean, not only is there the demonstration of power and the reconnection with something ancient in the growing of a seed, but there's also, if you just stop to think about what it means, that you have this little object, maybe like a little pebble, and that somehow it contains the necessary information to extract from the soil and from the air the materials necessary, and it has the information to build this, a tree, right? A tree from thin air. That is, a miracle, except in one regard, which is that we have some understanding of how it works, some understanding. But, I think it's amazing that most people probably spend their entire life from birth to death, and they never spend 5 minutes thinking about what it means that seed contains information sufficient to cause a tree to happen on its own without intervention, right? That's an amazing thing. And maybe that's part of what you're saying about reconnection.
Reconnection and recognizing the potential, Bohm, a quantum physicist with whom I would have worked, but I worked with his student, he talked about the implicate order, the order within that unfolds. Yeah. And he was, of course, talking about quantum phenomena, but in that seed is the implicate order of the tree. It's all in there. Yeah. And
right.
that power is the power of life and living systems. And I'm just working on a new manuscript, and I realized that there's so much connection between the quantum thinking and evolutionary thinking, the power of the seed. Schrödinger, the quantum physicist, inspired by Indian thought, started to look more deeply at living systems. And he has a little book called What is Life? And he says, life, unlike machines, machines create entropy. The more they grow, the more entropy you have. Living systems reverse entropy because they create organized order. And that is at the, Mr. Gates has just talked about GMOs as magical seeds. No, that's not the magical part. The power of the seed to become the crop, to become the tree, that is the true unfolding of life. Shooting a gene in blindness, editing genes in ignorance, that is not magic. It's ignorance.
It's ignorance. And it is also such a woeful misrepresentation. The fact is, even those with this power to edit genes or to splice them in do not have the knowledge to write any useful gene. They couldn't write a single one. They don't speak the language. And so, okay, you've done something impressive. You've taken a gene from here and you've put it in that organism that it didn't exist in. I get it. But the fraction of the wonder of that seed that is actually the result of the editing is essentially zero. And the idea that this is your seed because you edited that gene in is preposterous on its face if you understand the genetic underpinnings of what it is to be a seed. It makes no sense. But I fear that people just can't grasp it, that they don't realize that what is being taken from them is their world. They live in a world of plants that reproduce themselves and animals that reproduce themselves, and they're being handed some sort of technologically modified version, and they don't realize what they're giving up.
I just have at the Navdanya farm, I have a group of visitors who've come from around the world who are seed savers. And they've come to interact with Navdanya. And I think if all of us could become seed savers, learn from the seed, learn the power of the seed, that if we start thinking of ourselves as seeds, we realize we have a lot of power. If the seed can become a tree, if we think of ourselves as seeds, we can have the kind of power that is needed to make the change we need to see.
I would add to that evolution has made some. It has taken an expedient route in a couple of ways that have not served us well in modern times. One of them is that it caused us to be focused on ourselves as individuals because our ancestors only had a certain amount of ability to affect things. There was no reason to understand one's descendants 10 generations down the road because there was no ability to affect their world one way or the other. One could only affect things very locally, which created this focus on the self. But what we really are is a very temporary conscious custodian of something much more long-standing and durable. And we can screw it up in a single generation. But our job really is to keep the experiment going as long as possible, to deliver the experience that we have of life to as many descendants as can experience it, and to deliver it to them, not just the fact of life, but to deliver them a healthy planet on which to live out their lives, to deliver them a system that frees them to do with their life something meaningful. And because we are so obsessed with our current selves, because we are obsessed with ourselves as individuals, we don't really have a relationship with our obligation to the future. And I am troubled by the fact that it is increasingly, even things like light pollution cause us not to have the reminder in the night sky of what place we actually hold in the universe. right? And I think this is getting to be a harder and harder job. That technology is it's everywhere you look. And so we are losing touch with how we got here.
Well, I wrote a book with a fellow ecofeminist, Maria Mies, and she has a chapter in it called From the Individual to the Dividual, because not only have we been fragmented from the ecological web of life, but from the social community of life in thinking artificially about us as little atoms in an alien universe when we are interbeings, when we are entangled socially, generationally, we are entangled ecologically. Actually, cultures like mine, cultures like the First Nations in North America, always talked about the seventh generation. That we must think of the seventh generation to come. And every act of ours should make their possibilities better. And that's one reason society is thinking in the seventh generation, didn't go around trashing the planet. It's when you don't think of the species next door, your next generation, your neighbor, which is the kind of selfish, egoistic self that's being created, and then a fragmented self, I mean, I feel sad to see young people not know how to do anything beyond their computers. That's why I encourage them to come learn farming. Put your hands in the soil. Learn you are part of the soil. Learn that those soil organisms shape you. And that brings a new humility, and it brings a new power. I think what's being bred today is a new inferiority. And from that new inferiority, a huge aggression against others. If we remember that the word humus is the word for soil, the word human is derived from humus, and the word humility is derived from the same humus. So we are soil, we are seed, we are soil. And that is how we take our power back and extend, like the mycorrhizal fungi, our networks to create the new economy, the new democracy, the new cultures that are needed.